Yeah, Steve Tidler here. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you, Commissioner Tidler. Yeah. We are.
We ready? Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Agenda item 1, the call to order. It's 9:30 a.m. on June 22nd, 2023, and I call this meeting of the Citizens Clean Elections Commission to order. With that, we'll take attendance. Commissioners, please identify yourselves for the record.
Yeah, Steve Tidler here.
Thank you, Commissioner Tidler.
Good morning. This is Commissioner Amy Chan. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you fine. Thank you, Commissioner Chan. And I'm Chairman Kimball, and we have a quorum. Item 2, discussion possible action on minutes for the April 27th, 2023 meeting. You received the minutes in your packet. Is there any discussion, corrections, or comments about the minutes, commissioners? If not, do I have a motion to approve them?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Tidler. We have a motion to approve the minutes. I'll call roll. Commissioner Chan,
Aye.
Commissioner Tidler,
Aye.
and Chairman Kimball, I vote aye. Item 3, discussion possible action on the executive director's report. Tom?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you all for being here. And to our audience, thank you for being here. Just really briefly, I wanted to mention there is an election on August 1st. I think that there are elections in, I want to say Yavapai County and Tucson. And the voter registration deadline is July 3rd. Just a quick note on the legislature, the governor signed the fiscal 2024 state budget in May. The legislature then recessed, came back, and will coming back again on July 31st. One thing to bear in mind that although the Clean Elections Fund is appropriated by the voters, the budget is, the JLBC reported, I believe yesterday or the day before, that the revenues are significantly down based on the essentially based on the reduction in tax rates that took effect sometime, I think it's late last year or at the first of the year. So that will kind of something to keep an eye on. I think that I wanted to really quickly mention, I think that we've seen, if you look through the voter education outreach activities we've done this past month in June, really we've done quite a bit. We've been up and down the state and met with a variety of different people from all kinds of walks of life. We had the opportunity to sponsor the African American Conference on Disabilities last week, and Commissioner Meyer was able to join us there along with Gina and Avery. Gina has, you mentioned in the report, had worked with the King County Elections Department, which is Seattle, on their voter education and outreach activities, and they've incorporated those recommendations directly into their report back to their election, I believe to the board of supervisors or to the I don't know what they call it in King County, but into their recommendations, which was not a good thing to see. We do have in the report and attached the biennial adjustments for the clean elections candidates. There is an increase there from prior years. The legislature, for example, a legislative candidate is now going to be closer to $50,000, a little bit more than that, plus their seed money. I think they were at 46, I want to say something like that in 2022. In 2022, these numbers took a big hit from we assume COVID-related a COVID-related lack of filing of income tax returns. That's part of the formula. So this is sort of hopefully started to catch them up to where they ought to be under accounting for inflation. Obviously, inflation is a moving target. I guess the other thing I really need to mention, and we just got the order this morning, is that the Maricopa Superior Court dismissed with leave to amend the Goldwater Institute's lawsuit challenging the Arizona, the Voters' Right to Know Act. We had that oral argument on May 12th. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to really review it. Mary is here. If for some reason we want to, if you, I don't know, probably not really the time to really go into depth about it, but nevertheless, it is an appealable order, and so there's probably a reasonable expectation that there might be an appeal. But I do think that that's an important thing to note. So those I believe were the main points I wanted to make sure we hit in the executive director's report.
Thank you, Tom. Are there any questions or comments from members of the commission? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 4, discussion and possible action on the debates work group. The commission's debate work group met throughout the spring, covering all areas of the commission's debate program, from legislative debate formats to hosting a lieutenant governor's debate in 2026. The group included leaders from political parties, former elected officials and candidates, community advocates, and experts in elections and campaigns. As I told the members at our last meeting, I was very grateful for their willingness to come together and help make the debate process a better experience for both voters and for candidates. It was a privilege to hear from them and the expertise they brought to the table. I am extremely grateful for their time and for all the efforts that they put into this undertaking. I think that as a matter of public discourse, the work group confirmed that the Clean Elections debate program really matters. It matters for bringing information to voters, and it matters for ensuring candidates engage with ideas, with each other, and with the public. In a polarized time, a program like this brings people out of their corners and offers an opportunity for the community to share in the decision-making that makes our democracy work. With that, I wanted to ask Gina to review the report that is in our materials. Gina?
Good morning, commissioners. I will go through the report, explain its structure, and highlight a few of the key points. The report is available in the commission meeting packet that was posted online, and we'll have the report also posted to our debates webpage after the fact as well too. So first, when we go through the structure of the report, it's organized by, there is a letter to the commission from the debate work group members. And then when we go through each section, you'll see background information that explains what the current process was for the commission in regards to each section item. And then we get into the actual recommendations of the work group. And then we have a brief staff analysis that talks about, okay, can we implement these recommendations? What would that look like from a agency perspective? So first we'll go through the letter. Essentially, again, this is directly from the work group members to the commissioners, introducing the report and talking about how often they came together. So I won't go through that. I won't read it and go through it in too much detail. But essentially, the debate work group members are presenting the report to the commission for review of their recommendations and to ideally accept the report. And they do thank the commission for convening the work group together and facilitating a transparent and inclusive approach to improving Arizona's official debates. So we'll jump into the first section, which is essentially the standards for a successful debate. This is the very first meeting that the work group had to sort of kick off the idea of what truly makes a successful debate from both the voter perspective, but also the candidate perspective. And ideally, what the work group brought together in these bullet points of recommendations are, it's very important about awareness, that the voter has an understanding of when the debates are going to be occurring, why they should tune in. And so overall, the key theme there is advertising and making sure that voters are aware the debates are occurring, the schedule, and how they can tune in. We'll also see a key theme here about the moderators. So it's important both from the moderator or for the voter perspective, but also for the candidate perspective about how important it is to have a moderator who understands the issues, especially if we're talking about our legislative districts. They understand what's happening within those specific districts, and that they have the skill sets to be able to facilitate the discussion, to control the length and control the tenor of the debate. So advertising and moderators were a key theme here. And then we get in a little bit more to making sure that the information from the debate itself is accessible and digestible. So there's suggestions here, such as how we can take the debate, split it up into chunks, create it so it's organized by issue, all in the effort of making sure that it is easily accessible to the voter. And also making sure that we have information there so that the voters know how to contact the candidates directly if they want more information. On the candidate perspective, you'll see a lot of those key themes there too, how important it is for the moderator, but also it's very imperative that the commission has information for the candidate to understand the reach of why that candidate should give up their precious time during the campaign cycle to actually dedicate their time to come and attend a debate. So they have a good idea of how they can reach the voters in their community. We should have information for the topics in advance so that the candidates can have buy-in, because the thought is, yes, these debates are for voters, but it's also the opportunity to connect the voters and the candidates directly. And so the candidates need to have buy-in on that too. And it's their opportunity to communicate to the voters where they stand on their platforms. So the candidates should be able to have buy-in on the topics that will be discussed during the debate in advance. There's a few other notes here, such as making sure that we have very clear guidelines available to the candidates for what the rules and the format and the run of show will be of the debate. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that too in some other sections for recommendations. So ultimately, the commission and the staff analysis for this section believes that these recommendations are to some extent already done. They're very feasible to expand upon to meet the recommendations that the work group has provided. And then for the recommendations that are not currently in practice, such as getting the candidate input in advance on the topics, we can certainly do that. So ultimately for this section, staff feels that we can easily implement it. I'll jump next to the format. This is probably the section that has the most significant change to the debate process. So a little bit of background information. Historically, how the commission hosts our legislative debates. So that's important here. We're talking legislative. They would be held by district. And within that, every candidate, regardless of chamber or political party, every candidate within that district would be invited and would be able to participate in the debate. So what that means is that we could have a single debate for, let's say, Legislative District 1, and we would have candidates from both the Senate and the House and from all of the political parties. So it would be Republicans and Democrats, and perhaps if there were Libertarian candidates. So we would have all of these candidates together in a single debate, and that would mean that candidates who perhaps are not true opponents of one another would still be able to engage one another. So a key recommendation for this section that came out of the debate work group is that we should structure them by party and by chamber. So that would allow for the true candidate opponents to engage one another directly. So for example, we would still have a single night where we would have Legislative District 1 debate, but within that time period, we would organize the run of show so that the candidates for state senate, the two candidates that are running for state senate for the Republican primary, would only debate one another. So that's how they would be organized. To do this, it would just require a little bit more planning from staff. We could definitely accomplish that recommendation. It would just require more planning, but also more communication to the public about what the run of show would be for the debates. So that way voters know, okay, when they first tune in and they only see these two candidates, we're going to have more candidates forthcoming. That's especially important for our independent voters who may be viewing this debate and ultimately still need to just still need to decide what party ticket that they want to vote on in a primary. So
Mr. Chairman and Gina, could I just ask a quick question? This is Amy Chan.
Yes, Commissioner Chan.
I apologize for interrupting, but so I feel very ignorant right now because I have watched the debates and enjoyed the debates, and I frankly don't have a recollection that we have not separated them by party and chamber before. So what I'm understanding from you is that in the past, we would just have the House and Senate candidates for LD1, for example, by party, I assume, participate in a debate, or how did that work? Can you reiterate that for me? Because to me, the recommendation makes perfect sense, and I thought that's what we were doing.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Chan, the recommendation from the debate work group is not what we have been doing. We have been having them all together. However, we would work with our moderator to ensure that the moderator would control the flow of the debate to allow for the true opponents to engage one another. But there were still other candidates there who were not technically in the same primary, but because they were all in the same legislative district, they were still there. So for example, we could have had a Senate Republican candidate who could have questioned a House Democratic candidate on something they said during the debate. So again, since they're not true opponents, this new recommendation, by splitting them up within that event, would only allow for the true candidates to engage one another. So yes, in the past, we have not split them up by party and by chamber. It was literally just one event per district, with any candidate who was in that district whose name was on the ballot would be invited to attend. So we would do a little bit more structuring to allow for this recommendation.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Gina?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, commissioners. That is essentially the largest, the most significant change that would impact our debate process. And ultimately, again, it just requires more planning on the staff side, which we can definitely do, but also more communication to the voters who understand how this debate flows, when they will see the candidates, and who is the true opponents for one another. So when we get to the staff analysis, we'll see that we can absolutely implement this process. But again, it's just going to require more communication on the run of show. So I'm happy to jump into the next section, which are the rules of the debate. A little bit of background. The way we would host our debates in the past, the rules, the run of show two, we would start off with the moderator opening the debate. We would allow 1 minute for opening and closing statements for the candidates, 1 to 2 minutes for responses to voter questions, and we did permit rebuttals. Rebuttals and interruptions were allowed. We did allow the moderator to limit time responses for time management purposes. And the moderator, again, would ultimately try to explain to the public who the true opponents were. And we would go in a certain order, alpha order by last name, by Senate and then House, in terms of the opening statements and who would speak first. And then the moderator would close the debate. So it was a very, I don't know if I would say informal, but a structure that would allow for discussion. And when we get into the key points and recommendations, again, this goes back to the theme that we saw earlier, is that we should have very clear rules to the candidates about what they should expect. So when can you interrupt? When can somebody interrupt you? How much time do you have? And speaking of time, the recommendation is that we should have time limits for the candidates, and the candidates need to be aware of those time limits. They should be enforced by the moderator, but not in a strict manner. So the moderator will still have some discretion here on when to perhaps allow a candidate to finish their thought, or when to. All right, I apologize for that brief interruption, but going on for the key points and recommendations for the rules. Ultimately, the recommendations are we need to be clear about what those rules are for the candidates and also for the voters so they understand what to expect. And again, when we get down to the topics, making sure that we supply to both the candidates and the voters the topics that will be discussed during the debate in advance, but not the actual questions. And again, you'll see a lot of recommendations here that really rely on the moderator to be able to control the discussion, control interruptions, and come back to candidates for responses or rebuttals. So ultimately, the staff analysis here in this section is that many of these recommendations are currently in place. We can just tighten them up, strengthen them up a little bit more. And they ultimately prove to be a significant change. The most significant change would be providing the candidates those topics in advance.
So just for those of you who are viewing our meeting online, we record the meetings because it's helpful to maintain our records for all kinds of reasons. So we're having a little technical difficulty. So if you hear that, that's what that is.
Okay, so we're good, right? We're recording. Okay. Perfect. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, apologies for that. So we paused while we got the recording back up. So ultimately for the rules, the staff analysis is that all of the recommendations that the debate work group members recommended, we can absolutely implement those. And as I mentioned, they are ultimately strengthening and tightening up some of the procedures that we already have in place. The next section will be moderators. And this is, I think, a very important section. The debate work group had a lot of discussion about moderators, and the consensus was that the moderator really makes or breaks the debate. We need to have somebody in here who has the necessary skill sets to serve as a moderator for the clean elections debates. So background information, in 2018, the commission began transitioning from using professional speakers to utilizing local journalists to serve as the moderators. We felt that this transition allowed for having moderators who had a better understanding of the issues that were facing the Capitol, facing the legislature, the legislative districts, and the state. And with this knowledge, that then permits the moderators to better facilitate a more substantive discussion. So in the 2020 election cycle, we partnered with journalists from the Arizona Agenda, the Arizona Capital Times, Green Valley News, Sahuarita Sun for our legislative debates. At the statewide level, our broadcast moderators included Ted Simons, Richard Bruella, Stacey Barchinger, and Mike Broomhead. So all of these moderators had experience in both broadcast and legislative, or excuse me, and information on the debates that they were moderating, and had that that knowledge that a journalist would have in their coverage of the state. So the key points and the recommendations that came from the debate work group were, once again, this key theme: the moderator should have familiarity with the issues that are impacting that specific jurisdiction and the offices for the debates. The debate work group suggested that the moderators also have an appeal to the youth population to further engage our youth in the debate process, and that we should ultimately create a moderator pool, which I think is a fantastic idea, where we could work with the Arizona Newspapers Association, the Arizona Broadcasters Association, and create this pool of local journalists who are willing to serve as moderators. That way we could have this talent available and dispatch them to the regions that they cover. So for example, we could have this pool of moderators where we know we need a moderator for the legislative district to debate. And so we would be able to ideally have somebody who has experience in covering that district and understands the issues that are impacting that particular district. So creating this pool of moderators is a recommendation from the group. And, there are a few things that the commission needs to be aware of in terms of working with our journalists, for example, especially at the broadcast level. We may have challenges where, depending on the station that the potential moderator, the journalist, is a talent of, they may not necessarily be able to be on a competitor's station. So we just have to make sure that we are aware and that we start the moderator recruitment process as early as possible. But ultimately, it comes down to the moderator should have the knowledge of the issues and the skill sets to be able to facilitate a substantive discussion. In terms of the staff analysis, we feel that we can absolutely do this, and this would ultimately lead to an improved process for working with our moderators and getting them on board as soon as possible. And ultimately, it would strengthen and expand the practices that we currently have in place. Our next section is voter education and outreach. So how are we communicating with voters that the debate process is occurring, and how to tune in and how to submit questions? In the past, the commission has done a voter education and outreach plan specifically to our debate process. That includes letting voters know, okay, you can tune in at this time using this link or tuning into this channel, and here's how you can submit your questions to us either in advance or during the debate. And the key points and recommendations that came from the work group, again, we'll see this common theme that advertising is very important to connect with the voters, that our debates should be accessible in terms of we should automatically have alternative formats available in American Sign Language interpreters for the community. We should create toolkits for candidates to use so that they can promote the debates directly to the voters they're already in communication with, to their constituents. We should continue promoting the debates after they end all the way through election day, so voters know how to access the debates whenever they're filling out their ballot. We should localize the advertising for it. So what I mean by that is not necessarily a blanket statewide, here's the debate schedule, but hey, in Pima County, here's the debate schedule for all of the legislative districts that are in Pima County. Here's how you can tune in, or Legislative District 4. Here is the debate schedule specifically for you. So really tailoring and customizing that advertising for each individual debate. We also have information here on the work group recommends that we should also include information on the roles and responsibilities on the office that is going to be a part of the debate. So for example, if we are having a statewide debate about corporation commissioner, we should include information for voters and our voter education and outreach about what a corporation commissioner actually does, in the hopes that this will establish a connection between the voters and that particular election. And ultimately, we see here that we should utilize as many tactics as possible within our toolkit. This includes utilizing radio to let voters know about the debate, but also even airing the debates if possible in our outlying and rural districts. So for example, we have KTNN, which services the Navajo Nation community and services Coconino, Apache, and Navajo counties, perhaps airing that district's debate on KTNN so that folks can have access to that debate as well. The staff analysis for these recommendations is ultimately, we feel that these are best practices and further strengthen what we are currently doing. And so we do feel that we can meet these recommendations. Jumping ahead, we have our gubernatorial and lieutenant governor debates. Background information: at the November general election this past year, Arizona voters approved Prop 131, which ultimately created a lieutenant governor position to the executive branch. So the debate work group had a discussion on should we in fact host a debate for this particular office as well, even though the lieutenant governor is running on a joint ticket with the governor. The recommendation ultimately was yes, as it continues to provide awareness of the office, but also connects the voters and the candidates directly and allows for more of that voter education. So when we get into the staff analysis, we can absolutely incorporate this office into our debate lineup. And this will again allow voters to become familiar with this new position, but also allow them to have the same opportunity to learn about that candidate as they would any other candidate. Then we'll jump into broadcast opportunities and potential partnerships. In the 2022 debate cycle, we had the privilege of partnering with the Arizona Broadcasters Association and the Arizona Newspapers Association to offer the U.S. Senate debate to its members. So what this meant was we would work with our partner in the production of the debate and air it, but any member of the ABA and the ANA that wanted to pick up the broadcast or the stream of this was able to do so. What that means is that more voters across the state had the opportunity to tune in. So it really expanded the reach that the commission had with this U.S. Senate debate. It was very successful. The key points and recommendations from the debate work group are: it is very critical to continue our partnerships with media outlets to connect with voters so they have access to the debates. We should continue our partnerships with the ABA and the ANA, along with local, non-traditional and smaller media outlets to, again, ultimately ensure that we are reaching as many Arizonans as we can through the debate process. We should consider repeating and improving the model that we utilized in this past 2022 election cycle. And we should, again, we'll hear another common theme here is our moderators. We should ensure clean elections, should ensure a strong independent moderator has been selected. This will facilitate our potential broadcast partners' willingness to stream the debates. As I mentioned before, we may have some issues with journalists who are on TV being able to appear in a debate in a competitor's broadcast. But if Clean Elections ensures that we have that unbiased, nonpartisan, independent moderator, this will allow for more media partners to be able to stream the debate. Pause for one moment while we are picking up the recording again. I apologize for that.
Commissioner, sorry, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to add that if the recording stops for a prolonged period of time, we can continue the meeting and still be in compliance with open meeting law. So just for the record.
So I can keep going.
Right.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
But we can pause for however long you want.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to continue? Thank
Let's
you.
continue, yes.
Okay. All right. And during this process, the debate work group did have the privilege of hearing from the executive director from the Commission on Presidential Debates, where they offered their best practices, including how to work with broadcast partners, media partners, and how they selected moderators. And so the debate work group did recommend that we should follow the processes used by the Commission on Presidential Debates to offer any media entity that wants to pick up the debate the ability to do so, and then also have the ability to create that moderator pool and to request to our media partners can request to host or produce a debate and provide a moderator. So we will be working closely with we can continue to work closely with our media partners. Ultimately, the staff analysis here is that all of these recommendations will continue to reinforce existing practices and strengthen and expand those practices, and the ability to partner with ABA and ANA, as well as all of our other media partners across the state. It will ultimately provide a benefit to voters by expanding the reach, so we can ensure that every Arizonan from all four corners of the state have access to the debates. That is the last section that we covered with the debates work group. So we have a staff conclusion here. Ultimately, all of the recommendations that the debate work group provided, staff does believe that we can implement these, again, many of these highlight some of the existing practices that the commission already does and serve to strengthen, expand, and also tighten up some of those processes. So they oftentimes reinforce what we have been doing, but showcase how important they are, so we can continue to improve on those processes, knowing how critical they are to the debate cycle for our voters. For some of the recommendations that had more of a substantive change to our process, such as the legislative district structuring by party and by chamber, again, we can absolutely do those. And ultimately, at the end of the day, these recommendations serve to provide a better debate experience for both the candidates and the voters, and we do feel that we can implement these. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the work group. Staff does recommend that the commission accept the report, and I know we do have some of our debate work group members either online in Zoom or here in person, and perhaps they would like to speak, but with that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Gina. And let me just say thank you very much for your invaluable assistance during this whole process. It wouldn't have come together as smoothly without the work of you and Avery in explaining what we do now and making sure that the recommendations are feasible for future elections.
Thank you.
So thank you. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Chan?
I just want to say thank you to you and to Gina and the other staff who worked on this. I think Avery and I don't know, I think they're listed here actually. So was it you and Gina, you and Avery, Gina, who staffed this for the debate?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Chan, yes, Avery and I were the primary staffers, but of course, all of our staff supported this as well.
I am very excited to see the work that the debate group did. I think it's going to reinvigorate our program, and I was already very happy with the program, frankly. And so I'm just, sometimes things happen and you get really good things out of it. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank everyone. I see at least one member of the work group public member is here today, Christine Jones, and I don't know if I'm neglecting anyone else who might have sat on the work group, but just thank you for your service. I think these ideas are brilliant. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing the debate program continue and just be as strong as ever, probably stronger than ever. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Any other comments from members of the commission?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Titler. I just want to thank Gina and the group for a job well done. And I just want to ask them to keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Titler. Are any of the, do any of the commission of the members of the debate group, either here in person or online, wish to make any brief comments about this? We're happy to hear from you, Mr. Robson. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Mr. Chairman, members, my name is Bob Robson, and I don't know, you need my address or whatever. This is all new. It depends on what group you go before, right? Just to reiterate some of the points that were made, and I think that the staff did a wonderful job. I can't forget that the executive director was there. You were there. I mean, this was an interesting group that did this overall project. And, it's really significant if you think about it, because it was a cross section of ideology that really came together for a very common, and appropriate cause, so to speak, of trying to, update more so, just update the overall aspect of how Clean Elections manages debates at both the local level, meaning the legislative level, as well as the state level. And you have to, there's a real interesting aspect here, is that there are differences in all 30 legislative districts. And so when we brought up the radio and potentially promoting it and getting it out that way, if you realize people on the reservation, many of them don't have televisions, don't have cable, don't have access to a lot of things. I mean, I guess we're trying to bring that there eventually. But radio is their only thing. In a lot of these agricultural communities, the farmers, I used to remember just driving down the road, they listened to the radio. So getting the radio component in play is no small thing, and it brings voters together. The other, I think, to a great degree, is I think the change in the dimension of how you advertise and how you bring this potentially forward. You can see that, I don't want to use the words antiquated with what's currently happening, but it hasn't really moved over the years. And we recognized as a committee that there are a whole mess of other avenues available to advertise. And so whether you're sending me a text message in my community on that day or the week before that there's a debate that's going to occur of importance that I may want to tune into, along with a link to get there, these are all things that are available to you and aren't necessarily being utilized currently. And so we, I think, as a committee, wanted to broaden that perspective and recognize that there are other ways of doing things. And if you get stuck in that traditional set, it could be a thing. The other that you didn't mention, and maybe it's in the report, I didn't get a chance to read it, is that we also said that debates in certain places, you can't necessarily have the format that you're looking at. So if you're in a rural community, maybe the person that's hosting your debate could be the Chamber of Commerce, and you should have some latitude in how you do that. In Maricopa, I think we mentioned in Maricopa County, a lot of things you can do because it's where it is. But when you start looking at other parts of the state, and you realize this pretty quickly, that there's differences, and there's a lot of differences. It's just, you can't just drive the same thing that goes on here, there. That maybe you have the radio station host a debate. Maybe you have the chamber host a debate. Maybe you have a joint group, chamber and whatever, host a debate. And that should meet the qualifications of Clean Elections debate. So this was a great process. I think everyone that was involved enjoyed it. And I appreciate having the opportunity to do it.
Thank you for your comments. And I just want to emphasize one thing you mentioned. There was a great diversity on this group, geographical, political, professional background, every way you can look at it. And I think because of that, we've got some real out of the box thinking, and we've been doing it this way for 20 years. And like you, I'm really looking forward to the next time and see how it all comes together.
Thank you.
And here's a copy of the report if you want it. Ms. Jones, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to echo Mr. Robson's comments. I don't know if we have other members of the working group on, but the staff work on this, we cannot overemphasize how incredibly helpful Gina, Avery, and their colleagues were. As a former candidate, the diversity of the working group was super helpful, even from the perspective of somebody who's done a whole lot of debates. And obviously, we're advocating for the adoption of the report, if that hasn't been made clear. And for the amount of effort that your staff is putting into organizing, planning, scheduling, recruiting, just to make these events happen, the significant thing I think that came out of almost every single one of the working group meetings was, if you're going to put all the effort in, let's get people there. So I think that's why you heard, let's focus on moderators and let's focus on advertising. But just, Mr. Chairman, to you and your colleagues on the commission and to your staff, our heartfelt thanks, because the result, as you see this report, really would not have happened if it weren't for them. And it was just a pleasure to engage in this way. And if we can be helpful, I think Mr. Robson would agree. We'd be happy to help with selecting moderators, planning, any of the things that would be helpful to make the report come to life and make these debates even more successful than they have been for the last 20 years. So thank you for the chance to address the commission.
Thank you. And just to make it clear for the record, that was Christine Jones. And thank you for your comments. Is there any other member of the debate group? I don't think so, who's online. Do we have a motion from the commission to accept the report from the debate working group?
Mr. Chairman, I move that
Commissioner Chan?
I would move that we accept the report from the working group.
And is there a second?
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the report from the debate working group. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Chan?
I vote aye.
Commissioner Titla?
Aye.
I'm Chairman Kimball and I vote aye. Thank you very much. Before we move on, for the one debate commission members or debate group member who is here, we have a lovely parting gift. For those of you who are unable to be here in person, we will make sure that you get them in the mail.
There are like 20 of them.
So you want to come up and get yours, Mr. Robson, and make sure I give you the right one. Thank you for all your help.
Thank you.
The record can reflect that there was a golf clap.
With that, we'll move on to item 5, discussion possible action regarding opening a public comment period on proposed rules related to the Voters' Right to Know Act, Proposition 211. As you can see, our agenda sets forth a number of rules that staff has drafted to begin the rulemaking process under the Voters' Right to Know Act. I'm not going to recite them all here. The public comment period is designed to solicit feedback from the public, the regulated community, and other stakeholders. The public comment here will last no less than 60 days, and rules will be placed on the agenda for final approval after that time. We will take public comment up through and during the commission's meeting to approve a rule. Actions we may take after a public comment period, defer actions, make changes to the proposed rule and seek further comment. Tom, do you want to give us a brief overview of the proposed rules?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the commission, and I'll try to be brief. I do want to just emphasize this is just opening public comment on a set of rules that, so we're not asking you per se to weigh in on the merits of them as such. Although obviously, if you have opinions about those, that's important, and you're welcome. Obviously, you're the commission, and you're welcome to share those. But the main goal here is to simply get these out officially to the public. What we did is we tried to take the rules that we thought were the most immediately necessary, procedurally speaking. So, for example, we wanted to have make clear what the definitions we're going to apply. Within the definition section, we also have a couple of rules of construction that were designed to make clear if there was a question how a couple of specific aspects of the act work in at least the staff's view. We also have a timeline rule, a rule for how we will calculate time. I think the other issues that are, again, these are mostly procedural. We have a rule on opt-out notices. Opt-out notices are an important part of the act because covered persons are obligated to provide an opportunity to donors to opt out of having their money used for campaign media spending. We also have a section on how and what the process would be for those original sources that would who would think their identities need to be protected either by statute, court order, or by decision of the commission. So we have a process outlined there for, especially for the third one, which is going through, which will have some mechanics to it. The statute also calls upon the commission to set forth disclaimers for public communications. And so what we did there is we attempted as much as possible to use language that reflects what is currently in law at 16925. So it would not be all that new or different from what, in terms of its format and the like, from what is currently in law for political committees and other actors. This does adjust in some places where the context of 1625 just doesn't make any sense under the Voter Right to Know Act. But again, we tried to hew as much as we could to an existing framework that would not be a surprise to anyone or totally or different in kind from what they're used to, at least in Arizona. We have some recommendations on ex parte rules. Record keeping is another thing that the act charges us with, telling folks how they ought to keep their records under this. So we do provide a rule there. And then we set forth a process for the commission to issue advisory opinions. We have a similar process under the Clean Elections Act, which we call no action process. This is this is much more, and in fact, the text is almost entirely from how the Federal Election Commission does advisory opinions. I want to say briefly that this is the first set of rules that we are going to do. We do plan to, at a minimum, have additional rules on what our enforcement proceedings will look like. And then obviously we'll continue to see if we hear from stakeholders, regulated folks, and the public on whether or not there are other areas in which they want that there might be a need for a rule there. Part of the goal here with things like the opt-out notices is to provide a format that where something that might get decided in the course of, if there were some kind of enforcement proceeding or a question that came to staff during the course of a campaign, which if it's a predictable question, we would just as soon, and it's a procedural question especially, we would just as soon have there be a rule there so that staff is not ad hoc or having to come to the commission in the midst of the campaign cycle, right? So that's how we thought through the some of the rules of construction and the opt-out notices. Is the notion is to try to get to a place where we can anticipate what kind of questions we might get and try to have a default there that folks understand. So with that, I don't have a ton more to add unless there are questions. And I think, I'm assuming we made a sufficient outline of that. Do you think? Okay.
I think so, yes.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I did want to note, and we did receive one comment already from Meredith Parnell from the Elias Law Group, and that is in your materials. I have not had a chance to analyze that myself in detail. However, Meredith, Ms. Parnell or Meredith is here. And so I just wanted to point that out in the event that she wanted to, share anything about that comment or any other aspect of this process with you. I didn't want that to get missed.
Okay, thank you. Before we do that, are there any members of the commission who have any questions or comments about the process or the rules? Hearing none, does anyone wish to, at this point, make a comment about the draft rules? Ms. Parnell, I see you've turned on your camera. Do you want to say something?
Sure, I'll just add, thank you so much for letting us, Elias Law Group, submit, considering our early comment. We just wanted to get this in your packet this week so that it could be an early consideration. We're just looking for, we think the draft rules are a great step in the right direction, and we're just looking for some clarification on specific scenarios where there's an intermediary donor that's transferring original monies to a covered person, and also just raise a couple questions around the definition of campaign media spending. So, Tom, we really appreciate your look at that as you go and on collecting future public comments on it.
And Mr. Chairman, we certainly will be, we'll have some kind of response or further explication of that as soon as we can.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your letter outlining the scenarios that we'll make sure to consider. Anyone else want to make any comments on the draft rules at this early point? If not, do I have a motion to distribute the rules identified in item 5 of the agenda for public comment?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we distribute the rules in this agenda item for public comment.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Chan to distribute the rules for public comment. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
And seconded by Commissioner Titla. I will call the roll. Commissioner Chan,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Titla,
Aye.
and the chairman votes aye too. We will distribute the rules identified in item 5 for public comment. Item 6, discussion possible action on the following 2022 general election candidate audits. Mike's going to make some general comments on this item. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, before you, as you said, there were 8 general election audits. The audits turned out well. The auditor went through them and found no major issues. And the minor issues that were found have been or are in the process of being corrected at this point. And so based on that, I'd ask that the commission approve these audits.
Are there any comments or questions for Mike from any members of the commission? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the audits identified in item 6 of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the audits contained in item 6 of the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Titla. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the audits identified in item 6 of the agenda. I will call the roll. Commissioner Chan,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Titla,
Aye.
And the chair also votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment. This is the time for consideration of comments and suggestions from the public. Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date or responding to criticism. Please limit your comment to no more than 2 minutes. Does any member of the public wish to make comments at this time? Kathy, Paul, does anyone on Zoom want to make a comment? Hearing no one, we'll move on to item 8. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
I will call the roll. Commissioner Chan,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Tidla,
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.